The DRUID Code: Magic, Megaliths and Mythology by Thomas Sheridan. Chapter 1, Part 3. The Celtic Cross as the Mandala of the Gaels. During his work on the significance of the Tibetan mandala, the Swiss psychoanalyst Carl Jung developed his theory of the four functions of the psyche: sensing, thinking, feeling, and intuition, with which he had also made their connection to the four suits of the tarot. According to Jung, the purpose of sensing is to establish that something exists, and not always objectively within the material universe. Thinking gives the experience of the sensation meaning. Feeling applies the value or measurement to the sensation. And finally, the intuition function contemplates the origin and outcome of the thing which was initially detected by the primary sensation. Jung further proposed that thinking and feeling were rational functions, while intuition and sensation were irrational functions. Then Jung took the four functions of the psyche one step further and visualized them as a type of Celtic cross graphic. In the foreword to the Portable Jung, the American mythologist Joseph Campbell describes the concept beautifully, but yet failed to see the full significance of Jung's four functions of the psyche in relation to the actual real Celtic crosses of Ireland, known as high crosses, or indeed with the cruciform chambers of the Neolithic age. So for the sake of inclusion within the objectives of this book, by demonstrating the level of sophistication of the pre-classical mind of Western Europe, I will present an overlay of the theories thus. The black circle in the center of the cross represents what Joseph Campbell termed the inconceivable God. Along with Jung's revelations concerning the cosmological, symbolic, and spiritual interrelationship between the number 4 and the psyche, he noted that mandalas created by most people often contain symbols or images also relating to the number 4. Jung termed this phenomena the quaternity, as being something of an instinctual expression within medieval alchemical manuscripts as a process known as squaring the circle, or the quadratura circuli. Jung believed that squaring the circle represented the combining of the four elements into the wholeness at the center of the four quadrants, or paths, at the focal point of their meeting. The magic circle at the center, where man becomes one with the Godhead, and all aspects of existence are resolved from the multitudes of fours meeting at their own centers. This expression of totality via the merging of the four is found at the center of a Celtic cross, as well as in the middle of the central chamber at Cairn T at the Le Cru and other cruciform Neolithic sites. In every case, the underlying instinctual thrust is the same human phenomena of the psyche in action, being expressed from early ancient rock art and cave paintings and developed through the trajectory of human history. While Jung's discoveries, along with his revival of the Western alchemical tradition, was both groundbreaking and vital towards developing his theories of the unconscious, it was, as we have seen, the legacy of something that began off in the far distant past of Irish prehistory and even the very cultural fabric upon which Ireland was continually developed by the Druids. Within the ring enclosures of the Irish Neolithic and later sacred sites, the magic circle had already been squared into a cosmology of fours which was to repeat itself all through history. From the four ancient and lost cities of the Top de Danann to Jung's four functions of the psyche, the instinctual desire to square the circle was derived from the same expression of the unconscious. Freemasonry and Druidism. Before we look at the links between Druidism and Freemasonry, first let's consider how Freemasons viewed the Druids compared to how Christians looked upon them. None other than Thomas Paine, the English-American political activist, philosopher, political theorist, and revolutionary, made the following statements about the Druids in his essay, Origin of Freemasonry. When the Christian religion overran the religion of the Druids in Italy, ancient Gaul, Britain, and Ireland, the Druids became the subject of persecution. This would naturally and necessarily oblige some of them, as remained attached to their original religion, to meet in secret and under the strongest injunctions of secrecy. Their safety depended upon it. A false brother might expose the lives of many of them to destruction, and from the remains of the religion of the Druids, thus preserved, arose the institution which, to avoid the name of Druid, took that of Mason and practiced under this new name the rites and ceremonies of Druids. Here, Thomas Paine, the man who coined the term United States of America, is not merely making speculative connections between Freemasonry and Druidism, but he is openly stating that the Freemasons are the Druids in their modern form and are likewise locked into the same battle with the Christian power structures. The following document was cited in the Masonic Annals of the Grand Lodge at York, England. In 1717, a Grand Lodge was organized at London, England, and soon afterwards the old Grand Lodge at York was revived, and its members took the name of Free and Accepted Ancient York Masons, from which emanated the charter of the Grand Lodge in the United States, which was organized in Boston in 1733. In 1813, the rivalry between the Grand Lodges of York and London was compromised, and the supremacy of the former was conceded. From church history, we learn that in the year 596 of our era, Pope Gregory I dispatched Augustine and 40 other monks of the Order of St. Andrew from Rome to Britain to convert the natives to Christianity, but while the Anglo-Saxons embraced the new faith, the Britons rejected it and, being persecuted by the Christians, retired to the fastnesses of the country known as Wales, where for a long period they maintained the observance of the Druidical form of worship. And although that country has long since become Christianized, the Society of the Ancient Order of Druids has existed with an uninterrupted succession at Pontypridd, where the Archdruid resides, and from whence emanated the charter of the Grand Lodge of the Order in this country. So we can see from their own writings that some British lodges claim direct lineage from the Druids of the pre-Christian era. We know that there was at least one Irish Freemasonic lodge mentioned by Thomas Paine himself, which was located in Dublin and also claimed to be part of an unbroken line back to the ancient past and not merely a Freemasonic Druid revivalist sect. It would appear that the highly influential York Rite of Masonry makes no bones about its codes, along with the organizational elements of its structure that is based, in part, on ancient Druidic practice. This is not the same thing as being connected directly to ancient Druidism. It is indicating a continuum. In other words, the original Masonry of Irish and British, and possibly French lodges such as the Grand Orient Freemasonry, is not exclusively rooted inside the temples of Egypt and Jerusalem, but among the megaliths of Stonehenge, Avebury, Carnock, Evora, and Newgrange. The specific mention of the town of Pontypridd, or Pontypridd as it is known today, is worth noting too, as it was where the Welsh nationalist William Price became a member of a secretive group known as the Society of the Rocking Stone, a lodge which held meetings and rituals at the Iman Cave stone circle in Pontypridd. Price's involvement in Druidism came about as a direct result of being exiled in France following a failed uprising against British rule, when he chanced upon a stone in the Louvre Museum which depicted a Druid invoking the moon. Not much is known about the specific rites of the Society of the Rocking Stone, except that William Price was renowned in his day for claiming that all the knowledge of the ancient Greeks and classical world had been stolen from the European Druids. Can we determine specific rites and beliefs within Freemasonry which might present us with clearer insights into the specific rites of the ancient Druids themselves? The answer apparently is a resounding yes, and Freemasons themselves, within their own writings, make this direct connectivity very clear indeed. As we are ultimately dealing with a secretive society, we have to accept that such information is difficult to come by. I am personally in possession of some impressive and rare original Irish Freemasonic texts which state that there are two branches of Freemasonry in operation today. The first and most popular branch is Egyptian Freemasonry, which is based on Hermetic principles and rites. The other branch of Freemasonry, on the surface, presents itself as a pseudo-Christian form of mysticism, which was originally derived from ancient Druidism, and which considers itself as being a direct lineage back to ancient Druids of Ireland and Britain, without interruption, or coming about as a later revivalist or neo-Druidic philosophy. The Irish Freemasons and some British lodges claim to be a continuation of the same Druidical tangent that curves off into the far distant past. They state this without reservation, along with some very interesting commentaries on the uniqueness of the ancient Irish and their connection to the lost continent of Atlantis. These descriptions and theories are closely related to the descriptions outlined within the secret doctrine, The Synthesis of Science, Religion and Philosophy, written in 1888 by the Russian occultist Lena Blavatsky, suggesting a common source for both. Entering the magic circle. The concept of the magic circle as a charged, psychically secure space contained within a round enclosure may well have been the first ritualistic structures which humans built, even before they built housing or shelter. In 2016, French archaeologists alerted the world to an extraordinary discovery following a find of several Neanderthals-made circular structures dating back 170,000 years. These ritualistic formations were constructed out of stalagmites from the Brunical cave in southern France and were composed of 400 stalagmites that had been removed from the cave ceiling and arranged in two circles, one larger one and a smaller one. Magical ideas, even in their most primitive form, and the charging and altering of consciousness has been around as long as humans have walked this earth. The primal states of duality and humanity's relationship to both, being inside and outside of the magic circle, creates a very powerful psychological sense of termination between different states of psychological awareness. This then leads to the idea that being inside the circumference of the circle, one is in a very different place than the material world, beyond its orbital demarcation line. A sense of exclusivity and power then results from specific conventions and attributes which then arise both within and outside the magical circle. The negative space inside the circle of stalagmites arranged by the Neanderthals inside the cave in Brunical Cave became for them a portal to other states of consciousness, an idea that has not left humans since. From the stone circles of megalithic Europe to the huge sports stadiums of the world, the results are the same: altered states of human consciousness and heightened senses of awareness within a hallowed space. As with all ritualistic structures, from barrows to cairns to passage temples and sacred groves deep in the ancient woodlands, it is the empty negative space that is enclosed within the boundary of stones, earth, and trees which is sacred not the nature of the parameter itself. The stones, trees, and fence posts are the demarcation lines of the magic circle and the terminator between different states of consciousness. What is inside the circle and what is outside the circle are connected only by incorporeal and conceptual strands of consciousness and awareness. It is not so much the boundary that is important visually, it is the invisible other world held within the circumference of trees, stones, or an earth bank that really matters. The stone circles and ring enclosures of the Neanderthals, Mesolithic, Neolithic, and later periods were the primal sacred spaces of our ancestors from which the concept of the magic circle is derived. From Stonehenge to zero in the major arcana of the tarot, represented by the full card, the primal circle is the ultimate and untainted truth on the cusp of transformation. The ovum, the cell, the earth, the sun, and the unborn ego stepping into consciousness. From a basic arrangement of boulders as a circle, it became in time Shiva, the Vedic god of death and lord of the world, who dances at the center of the earth, banging the drum of creation as, no doubt, our Neolithic ancestors did themselves at the center of their own stone circles in heightened magical states of awareness. From the Bronze Age stone circle known as Lone Mag and her daughters in Cumbria, England, to the divine circle in the brow of the Buddha, the material circle representing the inner eye peering towards the subconscious mind, seeking the answers and guidance by means of dreams and visions. There is no fundamental difference between the people who created the cromlech of the almendras in Évora, Portugal, and the Tibetan mandala in terms of both being symbolic representations of the concentric conduits into the personal and social cosmology. From the sacred groves of the Druids to the wheel of fortune of the tarot, beginning and ending its cycle at zero, the full card, symbolizing the unborn ego on the cusp of its own archetypal adventure within the never-ending rotation of the wheel of creation. As the wholeness of Jung's concept of personal individuation is completed, all have their origins in the boulders and the standing stones our ancient ancestors laid out across the landscape with the same objectives driving them on. The magic circle, encompassing the sacred space within the boundary, operating as a kind of laboratory of consciousness, created and developed so as to attain a fuller understanding of what lay beyond the perimeter of the stones, the trees, to the chalk marks on the Mozzzy's floor, by means of forces of concentration and pure streams of psychic energy. When the later Druids used these stone circles to perform their own rituals, they became the amphitheaters for the development of the psychological well-being of the community, and thus became the wombs from which important mythologies were gestated. When the Irish and other Druids created these mythologies, they were bound to the limitations of the society for which these stories were developed for. Therefore, the tales had to be sequestered within adventurous, exciting, and most important of all, magical narratives which were easy for the average person of the time to recall and retell to others without any complexities of intellectual examination nor insightful exploration of any meaningful social undercurrents, negative or otherwise, contained therein.